Alright, hey everyone, it's Spoony. Welcome to Kickassia. The first thing I'd like to do before I get started at all is to offer my deepest thanks to everyone involved with Channel Awesome, Doug, Rob, Bargo, Mike Michaud, Mike Ellis, everyone involved for bringing us all down to Reno to have a really great time and film this really ambitious project. And if no matter what I say, if it seems like I'm being overly critical, or if it seems like I am complaining or something, I'm not. Believe me, I'm not. This was some of the most fun I've ever had. This is the biggest production I've ever been on, and I got to hang out with some great guys, make a really funny product, and I wouldn't trade this experience for the world. I loved every second of this. So it was a hard shoot. So that's basically what I'm getting at. Is this is actually a very arduous shoot, but. It's not to say I didn't have a great time, and so if it ever seemed like I was complaining or not, this is where I'm coming from. And I think if anyone has any issues with this video, and I have seen some complaints, which I don't normally take complaints that hard, but in this case, I kind of did. I think you have to realize, especially with this video, is that we basically filmed a feature-length motion picture in 4 days, and I think that really says something about Doug and Rob's ability as writers, directors, and cinematographers. Because let's look at the logistics of what happened here. They basically they orchestrated and gathered together 16 plus people from all over the world, international flights, all sorts of that. Handling the over 16 people's schedules. And being able to act, direct, and shoot a 70 minutes comedy with basically all, I'd say about 60 to 70%, action sequences all at once. And we did this in 4 days. And so, these guys are trying to keep us fed, trying to keep us happy, trying to keep us safe, and trying to keep us giving good performances. And you have to remember that most of us are not trained actors. So even when you are dealing with actors, it's like herding cats. So, but besides that, we're doing this all on location, and we had very little control over the environment, the lighting, the sound, and so we had to do this quickly. So anyone who's ever been on any kind of film shoot, you can't just film 70 minutes of stuff this intricate and complicated and funny and keep it witty and keep it flowing and keep it fast and keep the performances natural. So everyone really had to come together and work as hard as possible, stay on topic as much as possible. And Doug, God bless the guy, through all this adversity, through all this hard work, the guy must have been just stressed out like crazy, keeping his enthusiasm up, keeping his wits about him, keeping that level of control. We were all playing hurt, we were all playing tired, we were so tired, and basically keeping everything together. And so I am amazed beyond belief at Doug's ability to keep it together, just mentally keep it together. He didn't snap at anybody, he didn't yell at anybody, never lost his temper with me, not with anybody else. And it's always really difficult when you're dealing with actors, that many actors in this much of a time crunch in this particular situation. So thank you, Doug, for dealing with my crap at least, and putting together what I think is a really funny movie. I mean, this is a movie. This is probably the first movie I've ever actually been in. So this was an amazing experience for me, and thank you again. I don't actually know the story about how Doug and Rob decided they wanted to shoot here. I think Mr. Ball was a fan of the show and volunteered to let us shoot on location there, but that's as far as I know. I could be entirely wrong. You'd probably have to ask them about that. I actually had very little dealings with the man. He was almost always on set, kind of watching. He was actually kind of funny where no matter what we were doing, he would always kind of stand very respectfully off to the distance, very stoic, like arms folded behind his back, kind of just watching it as if everything was going according to plan. He had this very stoic demeanor about him, as befitting the head of state of a small nation. But yeah, he takes his stuff kind of seriously, and you got to say the name of the place right. And but he was never like hostile towards us. I mean, he liked having us there. I think. The family was always very nice. The kids liked having us around. I actually felt really bad that we were we basically took over this guy's place for like 2-3 days, you know, and so they couldn't run around, they couldn't make any noise. They basically had to stay exiled to one room at a time as we were screaming at the top of our lungs all day for like 3 days. So we stayed at a hotel in Reno, which is Molossi is about an hour outside of Reno. And I was actually really impressed. I'd never seen... I'm such an Arizona noob, but as soon as you get off the plane in Reno, there are slot machines in the terminal. You can literally gamble the second you get off the plane, and I was really amazed by that. And I've never been to Vegas. I would love to go to Vegas just because I hear that as Reno is pretty cool. And it's kind of a shock to the system when you see the ability to gamble wherever you want, which is funny because you can gamble in Arizona, but we don't have any kind of slot machines hanging out. If you want to go gamble, you go to the casinos. And I've actually never been to an Indian casino down here. They're probably not as impressive as the stuff in Reno, but I've heard Vegas is like... Reno is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of Vegas, but especially since there's not really any shows in Vegas. There are shows, kind of, but not anywhere near the level of what you see in Vegas. These shots were filmed completely separate from the rest of the production, especially the stuff at home. You'll see me in a shot here where I'm checking my watch. You will never see me wear a watch before or since this one, which I don't know if you consider that a continuity gaffe. I consider it just a part of a joke. It's a good joke, but I'm actually not the kind of guy who can wear a watch.
Hey, yeah,
it's kind of silly, but I fuss with watches. Same reason I can't really wear rings. Like I used to wear my class ring from high school a lot, and I just kind of fiddle with it. You know, I kind of twist it around on my arm, on a watch I twist around my arm, or a ring I twist around my finger, and I actually kind of like. I kind of rub the area raw, so I don't like to wear watches. I wear actually a fob watch that hangs off my belt loop. Joe is awesome. I actually think Joe is the one who really steals the show. He's got just endless enthusiasm, and with the fact I couldn't believe he brought weapons through security, because I actually called the airline ahead of time because I had these airsoft guns. I have like a Desert Eagle 2 9mm airsoft guns that look really real. So I called them and I was like, I've got these airsoft guns. They are completely harmless and fake, and in fact they're broken. I don't think they shoot. That's when I bought them. I bought them at a discount because they're broken, and they're like, if it looks real, if at any time it fired a projectile, you can't bring this thing on. You have to actually have it in a lockbox, and in a sealed hard case, and check it separately. I was like, no way I could do that. I couldn't afford that. And Joe actually did that. He had these MP5s, and I think he had several other guns. And he brought those. He bought a hard case for him, and he brought those with him. And I just like the TSA must have thought this guy was a maniac, like just checking all these submachine guns. But yeah, Reno. It's kind of funny how if there's any kind of flat area, if there's any space at all for a video poker machine, they will put a video poker machine there, like at bars. We would actually go outside of the casino to a bar, like an Irish pub, that would serve food. It was actually really good food. And if you ever sat at the bar, like the bar was basically just a clear, transparent piece of glass, and underneath it was video poker machines, and so you could not escape the gambling. If you had a problem, you did not want to go to Reno. And like I said, again, apparently if Reno is like that, Vegas is probably like, you could probably go to the bathroom and take a piss, right? And you're standing there taking a piss, and like right in front of you there'd probably be a video poker machine in case you just had to have that itch scratched. Most of the stuff you'll see coming up in the hotel was actually shot on the very last days, and it was kind of funny. I think I really complained at the time, and at the same time I don't know if I had a better answer for this. It's kind of complicated to explain, but he really wanted to get the Molossi shooting done right away, as in like we had so much to shoot down there, and it was such an arduous thing. He didn't know how long it would really take. I think he had 2 days booked out to do this thing. And we had no idea how long it would really take. And he was explaining to us that the weather in Molossi is very volatile, where it could just suddenly rain. No matter what happens, it could look clear 1 hour, and the next hour the storm front would blow in. So we couldn't shoot in the rain. We had to shoot when the weather was consistent, the lighting was relatively consistent. And
I know what you're talking about.
he just wanted to get it done really quickly. And the problem was it was such a physical shoot. We spent like 2 straight days running all day. And at least I was so exhausted by the time. Like, it's hard to explain, and I'll explain more about the conditions of the shooting. Oh my god! And I'll explain the direction I was given here. I don't think you will ever see a man shoot more scenery than I do in this one. I was almost literally chewing the curtains. But we are dealing with not the most athletic types, and I'm not speaking for anyone else. I'm just saying I myself am probably the least athletic dude around. And so, that was probably the most physical workout I'd gotten in years, was running across this landscape for 2 days. And so, we basically wrapped, I think, around 7 or 8. And we'd come back, and we basically had to go right back to bed, because I think our call was around 6:37, something like that. And so,
barely an acre of land.
It was.
Do you think anyone else
After the first day, you do not want to know what I saw in the mirror when I got out of bed, because I almost couldn't make it back to my room after the first day because my legs and ankles were so shot. It was remarkable how everyone kept it together as long as they did, because I probably was not the worst off. I remember Jason had the Until We Went Lord Cat. I remember he had some real problems. After the first day, he twisted his ankle really badly. He may have twisted both his ankles really badly, and he was not moving too well after the first day. He was not pleased. He was in a lot of pain, I think. And I think today, I should actually ask him if he's feeling any better right now. But I think I remember him telling me at one point that he'd torn a bunch of ligaments or tendons in his ankles, and it was really bad. I actually thought he might need surgery just from hearing the extent of his injuries.
Good.
Look on Benzai's face here is really priceless. I almost want to make that my avatar, is when he accuses Linkar of being a Nazi, and Benzai's like, "You motherfucker," and he's just looking at that guy. Okay, as for shooting in Molossia, like I said, very, very strenuous shoot, and I probably would have saved it for last if at all possible. And I think that was my main complaint, was, why couldn't we shoot this Molossia stuff last? We were so beat after the first time. But like I said, the weather was so likely to change that we couldn't put it off. We couldn't put this off to the last day. What if it rained on the second half of the day, the first day, and we were set back 8 hours? What are we gonna do? We can't stay here another day. We can't afford to keep everyone around here. So we had to get it done right now. And when we went down there, I think we all kind of got I won't say a bad feeling, but Rob Walker came back and he explained to us. He's like, "Look, guys, this is going to be really tough because the weather is really unusual there. It's really, really dry. It's desert-like, but at the same time, it's actually very cold. And there's a stiff wind that just kind of swirls around the place all the time." He's like, "I'm warning you guys, you need to dress warm, you need to be ready, you need to carry a lot of water with you. No matter how much water we bring, you should probably bring more, because it's a desert out there." And he was absolutely right. And some people may not have heeded his words as well as we probably should have. Even myself, I probably should have listened a lot closer to him. I was not actually cold. 8-Bit Mickey was probably the worst off by far. It was really cold down there, and I was wearing a jacket, so I was okay. But 8-Bit Mickey was out there dressed like a fucking Spartan in his boxer shorts, and basically nothing else. And he was just about to drop dead at some point. I actually between every shot, I would actually take off my coat and give it to Mickey, which was barely enough. I mean, it was basically like me draping like a towel around his shoulders, because he was still not wearing any pants through the entire thing. I think Handsome Tom would give him his cape. He had like a Spartan cape or something like that, but it was about all he could do just to not die. The wind itself was actually probably the worst part of it. There was such a stiff wind all the time that before you knew it, I would reach up after like 2 hours and feel my lips. I was like, "Man, my lips are dry." My lips were like cracked mud. It was so dry. My lips were a wasteland the entire rest of the trip. I don't know why. It was just. it was like the entire area sucked the moisture right out of you. Before you would just all of a sudden like take stock of your state of being and be like, man, I'm tired. I'm dehydrated or something. I got this headache and man, my lips are all. My God, my lips are split. And and by the end of the first day, I was sunburned like crazy. And being from Arizona, I of all people should know the risks of sunburns. And it's not like Arizonans are at all super resistant to sunburn, like we deal with this extreme heat. We just have the good sense to stay out of the sun where it's air conditioned. So it's not like we're Fremen or something. We don't summon sandworms to take us from one place to another quickly, We just like, it's fucking hot, let's go inside. Wherever we go, we carry a lot of water if we're ever going to stay outside that long. Kind of lost my train of thought. It was deceptively harsh because you don't expect to get sunburned when it's really, really cold, and we did. I can't speak for anyone else again, but I remember myself. I was pretty scorched. Angry Joe was beet red, and actually, Nostalgia Critic, was very badly sunburned, pretty much all over his face, to the point where I wondered if it was going to be distracting when we shot it on video. And actually, I think maybe it was maybe a blessing the lighting wasn't so good indoors that we couldn't make out the sunburns on his face. He actually had it really bad on his neck as well.
I declare this sucking.
So after the first day of shooting, my legs hurt. I could barely walk. It sounds kind of silly, but if you are a slob creature like me, and I love Film Brain, he is such a little weaselly toad in this show. He's a great guy in real life, but in this movie, he is such a little he's such a conniving little kiss ass that but at the same time he's not evil, like he's not hateable. He's so earnest and childlike, He's I don't know, he's kind of this. He's this kiss ass, but he doesn't mean to be. He just loves the critic so much. He loves everything that the critic stands for, and he's just willing to do anything for this guy. And his childlike innocence is rewarded with like fascism and just brutality. So he just uses Film Brain and crumples him up like a Dixie cup. But anyway, after the first day, I could barely walk. I was sunburned to hell. And when I first looked in the mirror after the first day, my eyes were like 20% the size they normally were. Like I woke up at 6:30 in the morning, I think, and I could I looked like such hell, just hell on toast. It was not a good time. The mornings were the worst. Like once you finally got out there. Oh, by the way, you can see a reflection of Rob in the gold pattern there. I thought I'd point that out. I actually did shoot a sequence of me tooling up in my jacket, but we kind of changed my character. We kind of realized my character was supposed to be kind of this reluctant to fight guy with a lot of emotional trauma. So we actually didn't shoot me like getting all badass for this sequence. I was supposed to be kind of unprepared, or at least having second thoughts about the whole thing. Now you're about to see us do a whole lot of running around and yelling, and if ever I was going to complain about the production, and this is not a complaint against Doug, because I don't think he could have possibly known the conditions until we'd gotten out there. Molossia is a really striking place in the terms of, it has its own natural beauty, but it's also a very harsh landscape. It's rugged, man, and I actually it's even more rugged than the place I grew up in, which is actually kind of it's mainly like a really rocky desert. So he's actually done a lot to kind of beautify the place, but at the same time, it's it's actually dangerous. If you're running around out there, it's going to be dangerous. It's a desert. It's got wildlife. It's got some really rugged. It's got rugged plant life. The landscape is uneven and rocky, and so if you focus on the landscape, you might be able to see what I mean. It's not the kind of landscape you want to go running around in. Actually, I'll come back to that. Here's one of my cheesy performances. The first time I did this, I kind of played it really not nearly as hammy. I played it like nervous,
would just be this one, Spoony. Just this
But
one.
I was kind of playing it more dark, where, oh geez, it's hard to explain. I kind of played it maybe more like Bruce Banner, where I was kind of fearful of Dr. Insano, but at the same time I kind of played it where I was haunted by it instead of like panic stricken and like raging fearful that of the slightest suggestion of it. So I think Doug's actually advice. I gave him like 2 takes, and Doug was like, no. I need like rape victim. Like you are absolutely panic stricken against the prospect of summoning Dr. Insano. And, I mean, like, you need to feel like completely savaged by this guy. Like,
You'll find none of it left here.
You don't. That's like the last thing in the world you want to do. And it was good advice because I probably gave him like 4 takes, and he always used the most manic, screaming take of all of them, which was probably the right choice. But we had to do this take several times because Rob behind the camera was actually cracking it right there where I look in the camera. For some reason, that just set him off, and he would actually start shaking the camera. I'll probably get back to that because there's a lot more scenes of me screaming about try, there is no try. Molossia, the landscape really rocky, really barren. It was kind of funny where you actually. Oh, I don't know if you can tell. That was probably the best shot, and if you missed it, I'm actually far too backlit from the horizon to ever see again, but we did this dramatic pose where we're standing in a line, and I had this... I won this toy lightsaber in the arcade of the casino playing Deal or No Deal. I won like 2,000 tickets at Deal or No Deal, and I used it to buy a prop lightsaber as my weapon. And actually, most of the people here are using weapons that I brought. I brought like 2 Nintendo Zappers. I brought a squirt gun that Filmbrain uses. I brought the Sega Menacer, which Benzai uses. Whoever's holding a Zapper is using my Zapper.
Heads up, guys.
But I was swinging this lightsaber. And it was actually kind of cool. It looks really good indoors. It's really cheap. Like I would actually sell it as a prop, but I actually don't think it would survive the mailing trip. It's really, really fragile, especially after hard use in this fight.
This is the moment you've been waiting for.
But anyway, during this dramatic pose in the line, I'm actually trying to pose. And now that I say it, I'm not posing in that particular... I'm not even holding a lightsaber in that shot. When we're doing the line pose, I'm actually trying to hold the lightsaber like the apprentice from The Force Unleashed. And I don't think you ever see that again. I kept thinking people were going to see me and be really impressed that I was doing the apprentice pose. But, I don't know. I thought it was going to be funny, and you just don't see it. So when we charge, for probably I'm mentioning the 8th time, the ground is really, really uneven. There's a lot of huge rocks, a lot of really strange dips in elevation, and it's not the kind of place you want to be running blindly across the landscape. You know, you want to be very careful about where you put your feet because you could slip and fall at a moment's notice, and then hit your head on a really sharp rock. So. When you're actually trying to give a performance where you're running and screaming and waving a gun in the air, you're not looking where you're going, and it was a really good opportunity to get hurt because nobody's looking at the ground. We're all trying to focus on what we're doing, and so you'll see us all kind of dodging around bushes and bushes and rocks and stuff like that. And it's a miracle more of us weren't hurt badly than we were, and actually many of us were hurt. Like I said, Jason, I think basically tore ligaments in both his ankles. Rob Walker, while doing one of the tracking shots, he was walking backwards, or more jogging backwards during some of these shots. And Rob tripped and fell and gashed his leg open on a rock, and really badly. He was bleeding, and it was actually starting to look really ugly because it started to bruise, and I don't think it got really badly infected, but it was looking nasty for a while, and he was hurting the whole time, so he might have bruised himself pretty badly. That was probably the most severe injury, at least the most severe immediate injury on that day's shooting. The Sentai masks were something that Linkara and Mars Girl came up with on the day. Mars Girl flew in from Japan, and she had bought Sentai masks, the kind of the Ranger villain masks, in Japan at like a 100 yen store, and so they brought those and decided to use those on the day as kind of their war face, and so they had these little Sentai poses practiced out. And I actually can't remember whose idea it was to use the Disneyland stuff about the cotton candy and the trees from Strike Commando. I'd like to take credit for it, but it was probably Linkar's idea on the day. Lee from Still Gaming twisted his ankle really badly, actually, but he didn't do that here. He did it in the car. we met up at the hotel, I think, going to the shoot, and he was getting into the van, and he twisted his ankle as it got kind of wedged under one of the seats because it was really tight getting into the van. Doug almost killed himself during the pose for the photo where he gets up on the big rock because he was wearing this big cape and he was wearing these boots, and he had this really heavy costume on. He was trying to pose in dramatic fashion, so getting down from the rock nearly killed him. That was gonna be an interesting shoot if we'd lost Doug. I almost got really badly hurt on the bushes. Actually, it seems silly, and they probably don't look like it, but the bushes here to basically, that's one of the pimp shots of the thing. I actually really like that shot. And it was only suggested basically on the day when we realized he had a bat, and he was like, okay, during this shot he's going to be shooting cannons at us, and I think Juwaria was like, what if I hit the ball back with the bat? And so we had this really cool pose. We hit with we shot it, it was something to do. Probably one of the best lines of the show. It's no use, the bullets go right through the holes. I love that. Anyway, the bushes. It's kind of silly to comment on, but the bushes here, because the wind is so harsh, it's likely to destroy any other lesser plant. If you were to, the wind is just a really destructive, erosive force here. So the shrubberies around here are these really, really hardy. They're like, their consistency is almost like of steel cable, and it's like wire, and they have these thorns, almost literally 1.5 inch long thorns. And so in the scene where I'm Dr. Insano and I'm kind of sneaking around the side of the house, my entire leg got entangled up in one of these thorn bushes. And I had to spend 2 minutes kind of disentangling myself from these thorns because they could have really hurt me badly. It sounds really, really silly that I almost got beat up by a bush, but these bushes were badass. If you had stumbled into one of those bushes, you would be in a world of hurt. You'd be cut up. So it was a really tough shoot, and it was lucky we weren't hurt worse. I hate to impugn Molossia. I'm not, because it was actually really. If you had never seen that type of landscape before, it was actually really beautiful. The side of the mountains, just getting there, and the garden, the kind of the train yard he had back here, beautiful stuff. It's just. It's not the safest place to be running around playing grab ass in, shooting your war movie. It's just not. It's not safe. You'd never get if you were a location scout for this place and you saw this rocky desert out there, and you're like, we're gonna be running around and swinging lightsabers and shooting guns and stuff. You'd never get that insured. I would be like, hell no, we're not shooting in that place.
Like me when I'm angry.
I like I said, I don't know what our alternative would have been. I might have tried to green screen it or something, but it wouldn't look nearly as natural. So Molossia it's a tough land, and its people are tougher. So that's why you don't want to mess with Molossia. They've mastered their terrain. It was actually miraculous we conquered them. It was the. Mr. Box did a pretty good job of acting here. He actually didn't have that many lines, and it was actually kind of funny how he didn't really coach Mr. Baugh that much on his acting of Fritz von Baugh or anything like that, because mostly he didn't say anything. He didn't say that much, not many lines. And he's like, when he first heard Fritz von Baugh's line, he's like, "Are you gonna throw an accent on or something? Do you have a German accent?" He's like, "No." And Doug's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "You don't want to change it at all?" He's like, "No, that's the point. He's the same guy. He's clearly the same guy." And Doug's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." We never got any noise complaints from the neighbors, which I thought was actually very unusual. Especially, we spent 2 days running around in the roadway outside, in the backyard, running and screaming all the fucking time we're doing this thing. And I just, not once did the neighbors ever kind of gather around and look at these idiots in costume running around swinging fake lightsabers and guns and stuff like that. I would have thought we might have gotten reported, but I don't know.
Flew right out the door.
So
If you look at the
one.
Cinema Snob is another guy I think who really steals the show. He's a great actor. I was really impressed with it. He actually got quite a bit of focus in this in this show, surprisingly so, almost. And he takes the ball and he rolls with it. You know, he's got this whole plot about him getting exiled, and I think it's really well handled. Especially, he gave several different, really nuanced performances. He'd give it one way, and Doug would be like, "Try it this way," and he, like a natural man, he did it. I was impressed anyway. He's actually made a lot of short films, I believe. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen a couple. But he's got quite a bit of experience, shooting on set, so that's almost entirely where it came from. You can see the lightsaber back there. It looks really good indoors. I was impressed. I was like, I gotta use this for... I actually have a lightsaber replica prop, but in terms of in terms of shooting indoors, it is actually not a bad substitute for just computer special effects. I mean, if you're shooting on the cheap, I might actually just try to find a way to build those myself and sell those as film. But look at that, it's awesome. But I liked hanging out with Brad. It was really fun having a guy on set who actually has far more experience with really obscure, shitty movies than I do. That's actually what kind of... I think I was searching for something on Strike Commando, and I was looking for Bruno Mattei stuff, and that's where I found links to his reviews. And so it was just really cool. He had all these videos to suggest, and we'd talk Bruno Mattei stuff. Really great.